Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Footnotes and Fairytales with me, Damien Fox, in what is the last episode of the series. My guest today is entrepreneurial, creative, and innovative. He is the co-founder of Two Stacks Irish Whiskey, the co-founder of Cologne Distillery, and the co-founder of Ireland Craft Beverages. I'm delighted to introduce to you today Mr. Liam Brogan. Hi Liam, thanks very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
No worries, Damien. Thanks for inviting me on.
Not to put too much pressure on you, but this is the last in the series, and it's effectively our Christmas special. So the pressure's on you to deliver. As I said in my introduction, I understand, and having read it from your Facebook page, you're the co-founder of Two Stacks Whiskey.
Yeah.
You're the co-founder of Cologne Distillery and the co-founder of Irish Craft Beverages, or
Yeah.
Ireland's Craft Beverages. That's obviously where you are now, but talk to me about how you got to that point.
Yeah, well, I guess it leads into, I suppose, the two businesses later on. But I grew up in Hilltown, County Down, not too far from Uri, and I went to school with Shane and Brendan, who are my business partners. So I went to St. Patrick's Primary in Hilltown first, and then St. Coleman's College in Uri. Before that, or after that, we went to Queen's University in Belfast and did a degree in finance. And after that degree, I worked in chartered accountancy in Belfast and became a chartered accountant. And I guess as soon as I'd finished that, I kind of had a desire to move on and get into like a business startup. So myself and Shane McCarthy, also from Hilltown, went to St. Patrick's, went to St. Coleman's, went to Queen's and did finance in the same class. We started Ireland Craft Beverages, which I suppose is going 9 years now, but the concept of that company was to bring a true taste of Ireland around the world. So Shane at the time was living in New York. I was just finishing up my chartered accountancy exams and whatnot. And we kind of had the idea of bringing craft beer and spirits from Ireland to places like New York where he was based. And didn't really know what exactly we were doing, but we said we met up for pints in Laurie's pub in Hilltown, and it was kind of on St. Stephen's Day one Christmas, and like, yeah, let's just go ahead and do this. So set up the company a day or two later and figured it out from there. So initially we started off, we met some of the craft breweries in Ireland. It seemed an easier step into it than going for whiskey because there only was a few distilleries in Ireland at the time. Only a few new ones starting out. So with the craft breweries, we chatted to a few of those guys and set out to export their offering. So initially the markets were like London and Paris, and that grew into a few European destinations, parts of the Middle East, and the US as well. So over the years, we kind of worked with brands as, I guess, a distributor, export focused. And yeah, we got into like 20 different countries and we're supplying this consolidated portfolio. And sort of along the journey, then our other friend Brendan Carty, the co-founder of Cologne Distillery, he was a chartered architect and he was living in Australia at the time. He kind of through Irish sort of whiskey clubs and seeing some real cool distilleries down in Tasmania, he had a desire to move back to Ireland and start his own distillery. So myself and Shane were like, yes, that's a brilliant idea. We'll definitely get on board with you and help you with that startup as well. So that's going back about 5.5 years ago, and there's probably a year in the planning of finding a location and getting the project off the ground. So it was brilliant, and around the same time there was a lot of new distilleries starting. I think Cologne was around the 25th new distillery in Ireland, and like at today's date there's about 50. So a lot has happened in the space over this last 9 years, and we kind of focused in on the whiskey. We kind of fell in love with it, I suppose, along the way. Craft brewing was great, and we still enjoy our craft beers and work with some of the breweries, but through the Cologne project and then later Two Stacks, we really focused in on the whiskey space. And Two Stacks is about 3 years old as a brand now. It, I guess, with COVID and whatnot, lockdowns coming in, like at the time, the first lockdowns happened about 3 or 4 days before St. Patrick's Day, 2020, and we had like 600 kegs of beer sitting in London, about to do a few events and this that, and we had to destroy all that beer and do a big long process of reclaiming duty on it and stuff. And we're like, this beer game's quite tough, but we have this idea for an independent bottling brand, Two Stacks, and we also had the idea of doing the dram in a can, this little product here, which kind of the first people to put straight whiskey in a can. So we kind of put all our eggs into that basket and launched Two Stacks. Initially, it was Belfast Whiskey Week, and then a launch into the US market. So yeah, it's coming up 2.5, 3 years now of Two Stacks, and it's gone from strength to strength, as well as growing, continuing.
I think it's fair to say your goals right off the bat were lofty. It wasn't that you'd decided to perhaps start out small and focus on a local market. You more or less immediately decided we want to export sort of to more global. I mean, what do you put that down to? I mean, I would imagine that night sitting in a bar in Hilltown having pints probably gave you a little more confidence than perhaps you ordinarily would have had. But I mean, are you inherently just an ambitious person? Is that part of your makeup?
I would say so. I guess so. I was working in the chartered accountancy game for about 7 years, and I suppose Shane and Brendan, Brendan was in Australia. Shane had been working and living in Australia and New Zealand and different parts of the US, and I kind of felt maybe personally, maybe I should have travelled, and maybe I should have went and done the overseas thing, but kind of the accountancy kept me at home in Belfast. So I guess I did have an ambition to, see the world a bit and get out there. So we kind of, saw that the Northern Irish market and even the Republic of Ireland market, there's limitations to just working within your native market, and you can't. It is important to be strong there, especially as a brand, to have a good presence in your home market. But for us, it was, let's go bring this around the world, and there's no real limitation on what areas we'll try and bring it to. It's sort of the world's your oyster type thing. Let's explore all options and get it out there. So it's sort of.
I mean, it's clear to be seen that at least two of the three of you come from perhaps a finance background, and yes, there's a lot to be said for that with respect to business and a business plan, but to export to a global market, I mean, there's perhaps a blueprint, yes, in some respect, because there's probably an established industry already. But for you guys, like, how did you find your way? Like, what were those initial steps, and was there any point that perhaps that you were deterred and thought, this is maybe a little bit more difficult than we had imagined?
I guess there's maybe just a little bit of naivety when you're starting out, that didn't really have anything holding us back. It was just kind of, let's go for it and see what happens, sort of thing. So it was that sort of accountancy background and Shane's finance background. It does sort of help. Like, I guess with any business, the numbers are quite important, but we used our contacts really to get it off the ground. So initially with Ironcraft Beverages, I had a few connections with guys I'd worked with, and we raised a little bit of seed capital, and there was a tax incentive for that. So that kind of led us to getting some investment to get it off the ground. And that was kind of, okay, that means that I can go full time here. We've got a little bit of investment. We're going to put that into buying stock and other bits and pieces we need. But there's a little bit of safety there that at least I can pay myself for 6 months or so. And sure, if it doesn't work, we can go back into accountancy or whatever. So that's kind of what happened. And as soon as I guess we weren't experts in sales as such, but we just kind of went out there and put it together that we were showcasing the product. It was about that concept of a real true taste of Ireland. Guinness and Bailey's and Jameson are the kind of three well-known brands, but it's kind of the messaging around it or the authenticity is it's kind of dialed back a bit. There's so much more happening here, so let's try and do that. So we kind of focused on something like craft beer. It's about focusing on the geekery of it. Or kind of into it. So it was just sort of doing through our own research and then developing sort of relationships kind of with Invest Northern Ireland and Board B and a few other bodies like that can help you sort of get out there. But a lot of it was off our own back, just sort of reaching out to importers and finding avenues where this could work with retailers and distributors. So we didn't really have any fear of doing it. It was kind of, if it fails, it fails, but we'll give it a go. And after sort of the first 6 months, we actually started already pivoting or changing the business model. As we initially were targeting bars and off licenses, and in the likes of London, kind of being a home market, you could do that, and even into Paris, like into a few bars and that. But as you look further and further overseas, it's an importer you need to work with, that they have their contacts. There could be distributors beneath them and then retailers beneath them. So it's kind of it starts looking a bit complex. But in order to increase the volume and make things happen, where it's not just like delivering cases to bars and off licenses, it's like shipping full pallets or moving towards shipping full containers of product. So it was kind of a big learning curve in the first 6 to 12 months. And I think thankfully we did that quickly enough where we saw that, in order to grow a business, you're going to have to hit a certain level of volume where it starts becoming viable. So I think I was the sort of employee number one and full time from the get-go, but we then hired Donald McGlynn, who was living in New York with Shane at the time, and he had moved to London. So he became our first sort of full-time salesperson. And then shortly after, a few months later, Shane had moved from New York to London as well. And within a short period of time, he was able to go full-time as well. And that was kind of just whatever sort of profits we were making, we were recycling them straight away into getting the three of us established in the business and then bringing it forward. But you're always kind of analyzing it, going what works, what doesn't, what changes we have to make, and let's do that fast. And the business model evolved into us doing like contract brewing and white label projects for the likes of Marks and Spencer's in the UK, and did a few beers for some airlines and all that type of stuff. But it was almost like now the position we're in with Two Stacks, it was like 5 or 6 years of learning of like how to do things, and then really now we've got our own brand developed. We can take all those past learnings and then not make as many mistakes now and move forward in a kind of a more focused direction where we kind of know what we're doing. We've 5 years of export under our belts, so that's how we've been able to bring Two Stacks and Cologne to global markets as well, with just that experience we had. But I'd say it was almost just 5 years of making mistakes and seeing what not to do, but then been able to form a proper business now.
Yeah. Well, I have two questions. It's one thing to have the business idea, and if you're creative enough, you can generate the branding. But to deliver on a good quality product, what was your point of reference there? I'm sure that yourself and perhaps your two partners, you've not manufactured whiskey as it relates to Two Stacks, but so what's your point of reference, or where do you garner support or expertise in order to ensure that the product that you're manufacturing is of an industry standard or better?
Yeah, well, I guess the team we have, like, so myself, Shane, Donald, and then Brendan from Cologne. So Brendan, being an architect, we kind of see him as he's like an artist as such, and the same goes into the whiskey. So Cologne Distillery is all about small batch, single pot still whiskey, and it's actually a single pot still whiskey that is more closer to a style that was made in the heyday of Irish whiskey in the 1800s through the early 1900s before the industry collapsed. Several reasons: prohibition, World War One and Two, trade wars with British Empire, that type of thing. Other reasons, but pot still whiskey at the time was made of a broad mash bill, mixed mash bills of you'd malted barley, unmalted barley, oats, rye, and wheat. And these whiskies just have incredible flavour. So once we started going down that rabbit hole of understanding, how good Irish whiskey is and how it's different from the rest of the world, I'd say we aren't really following a blueprint of, say, like Scotch or even American whiskey or anything like that. It's really looking back at the heritage of Irish whiskey, seeing why it was so good, and then trying to recreate that. So there's challenges to that because I guess Irish whiskey is a protected, which is great. It's got a GI, a geographical indexation, but the technical file that supports that is a modern sort of creation, and it only allows for about 5% other grains, or 5% other grains in a pot still whiskey. Whereas previously, from research from the likes of Fionnán O'Connor, he's an Irish whiskey historian, he has shown that it used to be far broader. It was a 30% other grains was about the norm. That's of oats, rye, and wheat. So really, like, Cologne has been making a style of whiskey that we would see as truly pot still Irish whiskey, but it's technically doesn't fall within the legal parameters, so we can't call it that. So in this sort of, like, whiskey has to be in a barrel for at least 3 years before it becomes whiskey. So in the period of Cologne making whiskey this past, well, it's 4.5 years now, we've also had to lobby and create. We created a group called the Irish Whiskey Guild, which lobbied to get the technical file changed and go to European Parliament and have that amendment made that to change the 5% rule to the 30% rule of mixed mash bill. But coming back to it, it's really about authenticity, what really is Irish whiskey. And with Two Stacks, you're right. We are an independent bottler. We're also a bonder and blender. So we have a bonded warehouse here in Uri on the Chancellor's Road. And what Two Stacks does is we acquire whiskey from various distilleries. We probably have worked with, let's say, 12 or so out of the 50 new distilleries. And we would select our whiskey based on what type of whiskey we like to drink. It's all sort of flavor driven. What is the best styles? You've got single grain is a category of Irish whiskey, which is unique to Ireland as well in the way we make it. You have single malt, which would be kind of well known around the world. It's been marketed this last century as the best type of whiskey, but it's sort of subjective. And then you have blended whiskey, which can be a blend of grain or malt or pot still. And then you have the single pot still category. So we kind of focus in on what we like to drink first. Through sort of being involved in whiskey clubs and doing tastings and that type of thing over the last few years. That's kind of what leads us first. I guess one of the main companies we work with, they're called the Great Northern Distillery, based in Dundalk, about 20 minutes from the warehouse from us. And our initial sort of products for Two Stacks, which we have like a signature blend or a core blend, we worked with their master distiller and master blender, a guy called Brian Watts. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, but initially we worked with Brian to come up with our initial blend. We ended up with 5 different whiskies in the blend. There's virgin cask grain, bourbon cask grain, there's pot still whiskey, which has been in sherry barrels, there's double distilled malt, and then there's a little bit of peated malt in it. So it's kind of just always experimenting, always tasting, and sort of not settling until we're satisfied that the product's good. So that blend, it took us maybe 6 months of back and forth and visiting Brian numerous times. And he was kind of, nobody was really approaching them that way, wanting to have such a complex kind of amount of input into a blend, but that's kind of what led us on to all of the products we've created since. We have a single malt which has three different malts in it. There's peated malt, triple distilled, double distilled, um, and then we have a pot still, which is we age in rye casks, a single grain, which is finished in sherry. They kind of make up our core products, but we then have created other things like Smoke and Mirrors, which is our peated malt. It has imperial stout casks for 60% of it, 30% of it's peated, and then 10% is double distilled. And we brought in a craft brewery that we work with, Breham Brewhouse in Monaghan, to they finish their beer imperial stout in the whiskey casks we use, and then we refinish the whiskey in those casks. So it's kind of from our craft beer days, bringing that sort of circular back in, working with the brewery as well. And I guess visually, we're lucky that we have a good designer, a guy called Johnny Lloyd. He's based in Belfast. He works with us closely on both the Cologne and Two Stacks brand, and he kind of just gets it and gets what we're into. And we try and create like a visual appeal of, if we're using a certain type of barrel, that the flavors are almost displayed on the label, if that kind of makes sense. That colors and shapes feed into what you're going to try and sort of experience when you're tasting the whiskey. So I guess we just first and foremost make whiskey that we want to drink ourselves, because we're just see ourselves as guys that enjoy the flavors.
I mean, it's clear to be seen that you have an immense knowledge of your business and whiskey in particular. I think you talked about geeking out, and you're probably fortunate in that you're one of those people that can come home to your wife smelling of drink, and you can be forgiven because that's your business. You've touched upon the artwork, and I talked to someone before, I think was Frankie Bannon, the local Newry artist that has done some work for you. I think your brand has been incredibly innovative, because whiskey, I mean, the conventional branding is quite dull. I think in many ways. I was thinking about this yesterday, and give us. I would imagine you've seen some of those blazers that people wear, and it's got a crest on it. One of those boring crests. That they're a member of a Rotary Club or something, and visually, that's what I kind of see conventional whiskey branding as. But what you guys have done, and I think I read something that one of the papers or an article kind of said that you have reinvigorated the industry, that I suppose perhaps in many ways has become stagnant. And this is probably quite a lofty question, but I would imagine that you're well fit to answer. When you have an industry as age old as Irish whiskey, and you've got titans of the industry like Jameson and Tullymore Jr. and Redbreast and people like that, how do you reinvigorate an industry that is aged old and breathe fresh air into it?
Yeah, well, I guess that's it. We, even with Ireland Craft Beverages, as I say, going back to when we started, it's that true taste of Ireland. It's kind of, there's modern and contemporary things happening in, I guess, the craft beer scene, the whiskey scene. Well, in whiskey, I guess it wasn't really happening as much, and we kind of got into that and sort of created it a little bit. But it is the likes of artists, like Frankie. Like Frankie would, has hand painted a lot of bottles for us and stuff like that, and it's visually very striking. It's very appealing, and the whiskey collectors and people kind of following us. Like, we've got a group called the Two Stacks Nation, and with Cologne, there's a group called the Cologne Cult, kind of online, Facebook sort of led groups. There's several thousand sort of people involved in those groups where they are more closely following the brand. So any sort of special releases we do in that, they hear about it first, and mostly bad first. And we get to see them at Whiskey Live or Belfast Whiskey Week or different tastings we would do. So there's a great community built up around it. But I guess we didn't really want to recreate like as I said, there's 50 distilleries, but there's probably three or 400 brands of Irish whiskey sold around the world at the moment. And we're transparency is really a big part of Two Stacks, where we initially set out, we said we're an independent bottler. We're not a distillery. We're not trying
Mhm.
to be a distillery. This is our business model, where we will independently bottle whiskies from various distilleries throughout Ireland that we think are good. And now we sort of say we're bonder blenders because we have our own facility, which we're hands on with the liquid. We we go to distilleries and design the mash bill and say this is a recipe that we want to create. We've done things like 100% rye whiskey, Irish rye whiskey, which there isn't a category of it yet. We do, as I say, the oats, rye, and wheat mash bills, heavy on malted barley content, and then we buy and select mature whiskey, anything up to 32-year-old Bushmills and different ages of Cooley distillery malts and grain that's out there, and then we put our own stamp on it with kind of finishing casts that are maybe slightly unusual for the industry, something new. Like kind of we would see things and aren't afraid to experiment, and nothing's really gone horribly wrong yet. Most things kind of work out well, but it's, I suppose, sort of taking calculated risks where you kind of think this is going to work, so give it a go and see. But yeah, visually we didn't want to be the same as, I guess, 299 of the other brands out there, where it's trying to be Jameson or trying to be like Tullamore or Bushmills. We just kind of had to start with a blank canvas, and coming from the craft brewery sort of years, like, you had amazing artwork and visuals that come out of the craft brewing industry. It was kind of that, like, let's bring that into the whiskey world and create something new. So our original bottle it's called Antica Pharmacia, so it's kind of a pharmacy style bottle, not a traditional whiskey bottle shape, and then using full sort of front and back labels to bring out and say that visual representation of the flavors that's in the whiskey, or the type of whiskey it is. And then we're currently moving to a new custom bottle, which it sort of elevates the packaging a little bit, but
Mhm.
first and foremost is our logo, which is the Two Stacks name. It actually comes from the old Dundalk distillery, which is now like the train station in Dundalk and the Louth County Museum and parts of that. But there used to be a distillery there that had the two largest chimney stacks in Ireland at the time. Navigators, seafarers coming in the boats would have used the two chimneys and the Northern Star for navigation. So I'd say we looked at the history of Irish whiskey, but it's a contemporary forward look at that. So the logo's abstract of those two chimney stacks and the Northern Star. So kind of an abstract look at seeing the history that was there, but navigating our way into the future in a sort of contemporary modern take. And similar with, I suppose, Dram in a Can, nobody doing this. It is innovative. We were contract brewing beers for airlines and supermarkets, and when we started out in craft beer, everybody was using these 500 ml large bottles, and we had problems with that in terms of they're very heavy, they're very big. When you're trying to export across the world, you're shipping heavy glass, and you know the cases were big and chunky, and you didn't get that much product onto a pallet. So kind of, yeah, I don't know how it actually came about initially, but it was like it'd be better in a can. You've no UV light penetration. There's less oxygen in it. It'll be lightweight. So you can. The boring part of it, you can fit more onto a pallet, more into a container, and it's eco-friendly actually. To ship this way. So yeah, those innovative ideas kind of came through, and then we were not really afraid to go into it. Yeah, nobody's done this before, but let's be the first to try it. And the drama can has worked out really well for us. in the last 2 years, like we've sold about 1.5 million units, and that is continuing quite well. And we're with two products in the can at the minute: the signature blend and the single malt. We're just about to launch the single grain and the pot still, as well as our Irish cream liqueur, which is kind of another sector we've gone into. We spent about 2 years working on an Irish cream liqueur recipe, which we feel is a really good recipe. If you look at say market leaders or the market standard in an Irish cream liqueur, only 1% of the alcohol is whiskey. The other 16%, because usually they're around 17% alcohol, is neutral spirit. So you're not really tasting whiskey in it. But that's what Irish cream liqueur kind of meant to us, was like, it's bringing the dairy and the Irish whiskey together.
Mhm.
So we use about 8.5 times more Irish whiskey in the cream blend. You do need the whey neutral spirit for stabilization with the cream, but we also wanted it to be luxurious and taste really good. So we doubled the cream content as well, or the butterfat percentage content, to make it a double cream. So we call it the double Irish cream liqueur. And again, the sort of the bottle itself and the branding, people are really commenting on how good it looks, and that's kind of part of it. The product tastes amazing, but also the brand looks good. So you do need the both to sort of stand out on the shelf and for people to pick it up. So it's been a good success for us, and we're just about to put the cream into a can as well, which I think is going to do pretty well.
I wanted to ask, and obviously I've looked at your website and I understand the dram in a can is a world first. You know, when you are trying to do something new that's effectively not been done before, what are some of the concerns? I mean, you guys seem to not be afraid to fail, and I've heard the saying before that fail forward. If you're
Yeah.
going to fail, fail forward, and there's obviously a lot to be learned from it. But when you're looking to be that innovative, where you're essentially doing the first of something, what are some of the concerns when you try to put that particular product out there?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, I guess there's technical challenges and legal challenges and stuff that we've come up across, but we've got through them. But I guess your initial concerns are, is anybody going to want to buy this product? Essentially, is there a fit for it in the market, and how is it going to be sold, or what's the best way of presenting it? That type of thing. But like you still, the drama accounts still in some markets, they don't really know where to place it. Like we got a listing with Tesco there recently in Northern Ireland, and it's kind of when you're chatting with the bar, they're like, okay, do we put this beside the cocktails, or do we put it beside the whiskey, or what way do we do it? And we also do the drama can, the 4-pack. So luckily Tesco kind of listened to this. We said, look, you're going to sell more selling them single units, because it's only £5 and £6 a can versus a 20 or £25 4-pack, and it should be placed beside the whiskey and not with the cocktails, because people will think it's a cocktail if it's in that section. So it is a bit different, but it's straight whiskey in a can. So let's place it beside the whiskey bottles. But we kind of learnt that over the first few years of selling it in the US and other markets, where there is a little bit of confusion of where does it go, where does this fit. But because it's new, and there's a big job for us to do, is the educational piece around explaining why does this product exist, and why did you see the need for it. And it is kind of it's the price point being lower. It's when we're launching our whiskey bottles, we're like, how do you get more people tasting it? How do you get liquid on lips? um, a miniature size serving is less of a barrier to entry. It's a lower cost for a consumer to take a risk on it, but it gets them initially in to tasting our product, and then maybe they come further accepting to the brand and go there and buy the whiskey bottles, which we find is true. But um, yeah, it's I guess it's not being afraid to take the risk. And there will be lots of hurdles, lots of barriers, but you can work your way through them. And it kind of it has gone fast, the last 2.5 years since we've launched it, but it still feels quite fresh and quite new, and we're still introducing it to new people. So I guess, yeah, you just kind of take a hunt and see how it goes.
Yeah. You seem to have a very commonsensical and practical uh, outlook to things. I mean, I've heard it said before, keep it simple, stupid, no point complicating things. And I think you talked about the weight of exporting glass and how much heavier it is, and it made more sense to ship the dram in a can, and practically that makes perfect sense. Um, I see that. I mean, it's been a tremendous success in that in the short time that since its launch, it's sold over 1.5 million. But I see that it's also been awarded gold at the London Spirits competition as well. How important are they as a measure of success when you receive an award for a product?
Yeah, I guess sometimes we are a bit cynical about the awards. The first year or so we didn't enter any, because we were just kind of thinking, oh, it's more about pay to play, and are you going to advertise with the company that's behind the awards company and in their magazine or things like that. But we have softened up a bit where it's nice when you win, sort of thing. Like, so there's the likes of you kind of go for the most reputable ones. It took us a little while just to sit back and see which awards actually are good and make sense. So for us, the best awards are the Irish Whiskey Awards, because they're blind tasted, and it's blind tasted by various whiskey clubs throughout Ireland. So last year we won the best pot still in Ireland, 12 years and younger, with our Polaris 1.2 release, which was a 7-year-old pot still in Cabernet Franc ice wine casks. And those casks we painstakingly sourced from Canada. Very hard to get them, and it was tricky, to actually bring them into Ireland and whatnot. But it came out as a really nice whiskey, and because it was blind tasted and judged by all these whiskey clubs, that award actually means more to us. And we were in the category with the likes of Middleton Distillery. They had Blue Spot and Gold Spot released that year. So to beat those two products, you wouldn't really. I would be concerned if it wasn't a blind tasting, and the brand was first, and the sort of the more well-known brand would be selected. But so that sort of, there's integrity to that. And then there are other competitions which we've entered, like the World Whiskey Awards. Last year we won the Icons of Whiskey Independent Bottler of the Year, which in Ireland, which was a nice accolade to get. And a few of the whiskies won gold. And then, yeah, the London Spirits competition is pretty good. San Francisco Spirits competition is another well-renowned one in America, but also globally. They have entries from all over the world. So we kind of, we don't enter everything, but the ones we do, it's kind of, is there a meaning behind it, and is there integrity? And the likes of our the cream liqueur, we won gold for taste and gold for design in the World Liqueur Awards, which are associated with the World Whiskey Awards and IWSE, the International Wine and Spirits Competition. We had 2 golds in it as well with the cream. So you can enter like 50 awards, but those sort of 4 to 5 that actually have a meaning behind them, we're happy to enter them, and it's been good that the products we have submitted have won the accolades of gold. And Cologne Distillery won a double gold at the San Francisco Spirit Awards for rum and raisin, which is the core single malt that we do in sherry casks and rum casks. So like double gold is the top award, and it was amazing to win that. It was like the first really awards that we entered with Cologne. So they do have relevance in terms of, if you're pitching to an international buyer, it's, if you're able to say, this product has won this award, it just gives them more confidence that it's it's a good tasting product, and it's likely to be well received by their customers. So it has relevance in that space where you can, when you're pitching or when you're listing new products with distributors or importers or retailers or duty free people and whatnot, if you have that to say that, yeah, these products have won awards, it helps get things over the line. So
It's,
yeah.
I mean, it's clear to see that in, I guess, a relatively short space of time, you're enjoying tremendous success. I mean, I seen that, the products and stuff are being imported or exported to 25 different countries. There's 30 states in America that your products are available in. I
Mhm.
mean, is all of that validation that you're doing something right? And like, how do you cultivate those relationships,
Mhm.
that in a relatively short space of time that you're able to have a global impact effectively?
Yeah. Well, I guess as I say, like we are like 9 years in business now, and the first 5 6 years of that was learning a lot of stuff and failing a good few times. So we kind of just, I guess, to win new listens, we've kind of been fortunate that I think we're at about 30 plus markets now. It's probably closer to 35, but half of them would be us chasing it, and then the other half it's come to us organically through kind of word of mouth, or you know perhaps the importer searching. Like the Irish whiskey category is experiencing a revival at the moment. It's growing internationally, so you're enjoying that the industry itself is benefiting from growth, and importers and distributors around the world are seeking out the Irish whiskey brands, and through their own research, they're finding us, which is great. And it is the sort of PR that's out there, or awards, or articles, or maybe our website, or things like that they're coming to us, and we're getting inquiries, and then we kind of have the process internally that here's our deck of who our company is, what the brand's about. Here's our sell sheets, which are like our product information sheets. And I think also what we've worked on is like our commercial viability. Our pricing structure is good. We've would spend a lot of time looking at what the price should be on shelf, in the home market and overseas, and then working back, the value chain and how to get it there, and what is our X works pricing, what is our costs, wholesale costs, or sell prices. So it's just really through years of experience kind of building up that we know we have to be good value, and we know we have to have a good product. That's the only way you're going to really make it, and those things have lined up. But we focus in on various different markets, like global travel retail. We spent the last 2 years really trying to get into that space. It's been tricky, and I don't think every brand's doing it, but you spend resource there to get in. Now we're listed in Dubai Airport, Abu Dhabi, Qatar. We're in like a good footing in Dublin Airport, and there's several others, but we're expanding into some of the UK airports, and further afield in the US and whatnot. So it's kind of, it takes, like with certain things, you're going, if we're going to put effort behind it, it has to be for the long term. So like it took us a year to get one listing in an airport, but then once we got Qatar, Dubai wanted it, and things like that. So it happens for a reason, but sometimes you just have to constantly work at it. And then with the word of mouth, I guess, of other distributors talking to distributors in neighboring countries, where, oh, see, you've got this brand, we might be recommended, but it's because we kind of work with our partners, and give them the support they need in terms of marketing spend. So we'd have like a advertising and promotion budgets with each of our distributors. It is kind of volume led, that the more they buy, the more we can support them.
Mhm.
We have internally, we have our tiers of which markets can get the most focus, because there's the best opportunities there, the most volume. Um, and we get behind that with visits over to the market. So we do a lot of travel. There's myself, Shane, and Donald, as I said, the co-founders of Two Stacks. They like it that the co-founders are going to meet them, and traveling over to see them and going to whiskey shows in their market. And the same with Brendan at Cologne, a lot of travel, and then also inbound. So like each year we run a competition with our US distributors. Whoever sells the most product within a certain time period. Usually it's in the first quarter of the year, and they run into St. Patrick's Day. There's kind of a incentive there that the top seller from each state is invited then on an all expenses trip to Ireland. We take them out in Dublin, have nice meal, nice time out, take them up to Newry, stay in Cleavey Castle, in the castle, go to Two Stacks, go out to Cologne, have a dinner in Cologne, dinner in the castle that night, and then we take them to Belfast for a night, and everybody has a good time, has a good trip, and then they go back to the market and continue to promote ourselves in a good light. And anytime we're receiving visitors, it's kind of show them a good time, and they reciprocate when we go to visit them. But it is kind of just getting out there and doing the travel, and a lot of stuff's done online. Like we launched during COVID, and that was it was good for us actually that we were able to, because we wouldn't have the budgets of the Jamesons or the resources to have brand ambassadors on the ground in all these markets, but you could do tastings and trainings over the internet, and we kind of used that to our advantage to get launched. And now it's returned to a little bit more in-person travel, but that's kind of what we're doing. We're putting the time and effort into promoting the brands in market, and then training the distributor staff and supporting them so that they can do that when we're not there ourselves. That's kind of there's a lot of time and effort goes into it, but it's worthwhile.
Obviously, Irish has a rich history, or Ireland has a rich history in whiskey, but I very often think that the general public's understanding of whiskey is probably misplaced. I mean, you can probably relate to this, and I know I can. I mean, my relationship with whiskey was usually at the end of a night. After having had a feed of beer, you finish off with a couple of whiskey and coke, and you're done. But I had no real appreciation for it. I mean, I've always had an interest in whiskey because I think, given the way that it's done, and that certain casks are held for a certain amount of time, that it has a particular story. But I mean, how is whiskey misunderstood generally? And I very often feel that it's not appreciated. You probably have that appreciation, and it's very different from the Joe Blogs on the street. But what could you educate people on that they could perhaps appreciate whiskey in a different way?
Yeah, no, that's true. Like, I guess people might see whiskey as kind of an older man's drink type thing, and I guess you could say in Scottish whiskey that's maybe even more of a stigma for them, because although Scottish whiskey is bigger than Irish whiskey currently, it used to be the other way around, where Irish was a far bigger industry, and Scotland came later. They're kind of stagnating a wee bit now, where it has that sort of attitude of it's for older men type thing, and the previous generation maybe would have wanted to drink what their fathers drank, but this current generation doesn't want to drink what their parents drank type thing. So it can get trickier to be relevant to younger people. But we think with Irish whiskey, it is that more innovation and stuff that's happening, and there's those different styles. You've got the blended whiskey, single grain, single malt, single pot still. There's so much versatility in it, and the likes of a single grain is light and delicate, and it goes well in cocktails, and it's quite sweet as well. And I think it's really getting people interested in whiskey. It's really trying it, getting them to taste it maybe for the first time, or being a bit more comfortable with it. It's really just tasting it. Like a good bit of the stuff we do is a bit on the geeky side, and there's a lot of cast strength whiskey, which is straight from the barrel, where it's not cut down or diluted with water, and that can be aggressive. So you kind of, when you're introducing somebody to it, you have to bring them on a journey of starting out with something that's not gonna scare them off really. So you go for the light and delicate, maybe unpeated stuff first, move from maybe the grain into a complex or a blend, then single malt, which can be sweet as well. It can be fruity. Different casks used, likes of sherry casks bring in like a richer, darker fruit, but that's kind of what you do. Like, people just sort of need to engage with it a little, and it could start off as a mixed drink as well. Likes of a highball, which can be just soda water or sparkling water type thing mixed with whiskey. We kind of we stay away from Coke and stuff like that, I suppose. Although that might be how, like, I probably got into whiskey through Jack Daniels and Coke type thing. But sort of showing people that you can appreciate whiskey, by just sitting down and enjoying it. But it's good to do a tasting experience. So the likes of it in Uri here in our bonded warehouse where I'm sitting now, it's inside shipping containers, and we have a little tasting room, and we do a sort of a blending experience where we call it the art of the blend. So people would come on a tour with us and create their own blended whiskey. So we'd have the grain, the malt, the pot, and the peated, and kind of guide them on, this is the four styles. You can taste them individually, and then to create a blend, you might use a certain amount of grain to your malt and pot still. And if you do like the peaty or the slightly smoky flavor, what a small bit of that can do in your blend. So something like that's kind of fun and interactive, and gets people to understand the different styles. And then we would have like a premium tour, where probably more towards the geeks, where we go down and open up a few casks of the whiskey and take samples out, and they can taste direct from the barrel. And that's when you're going to get the higher alcohol content, the more punchy flavors. But once you're kind of into whiskey, you can start really appreciating that. So it's tricky, and it's sort of it takes a while. It takes a lot of education and a lot of time. But I think once somebody gets into it, they can end up down a rabbit hole of, wow, there's so much to experience here. There's so many different aspects to whiskey, the different styles of distillate, and then you've all the different various casks. Just lots of different things that can be done with it. And as you mentioned, age statements, and quite fascinating of learning about it. Similar to the wine world, I think, where your different countries producing different styles, and appellations, and all that sort of DOCs and protected geographical areas, and the different grape varieties. And it's kind of, once you sort of get into it, you could spend years of your life learning. It's all about learning. And the good thing about Irish whiskey, I think, more than even the distillate or different casks and things like that, is there's a good community in it. There's lots of friendships made within the community, and it's through the love of whiskey or tasting whiskey or discovering things and sharing as well. Just the amount of interactions you have online and in person with whiskey fans. There's good camaraderie and good friendships, and great fun.
I wanted to ask that you touched upon the premium whiskey experience. I mean, I've obviously looked online and tried to understand kind of footfall and what kind of money that can generate. And I think I've seen a figure of about 67 million from people visiting and having whiskey tours. Yeah. First and foremost, why do you think we're so compelled to want to have that experience? I mean, it's to be seen with Guinness, the Guinness, tour, Jameson, the likes of yourselves offering that. What is it about it that we're drawn to, that we want to have that experience? And then secondly, in terms of sale, what kind of impact do those experiences then in turn have for sales?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, whiskey tourism, I guess in Ireland it's still quite young, but there are good numbers. There are good numbers of visitors. Like with COVID, you kind of had it was starting and it's kind of stopped, but now it's started again. So it's early days, but there's the likes of Tourism Ireland, Tourism Northern Ireland really understand there's a great opportunity here. People really want to come to Ireland and experience, these experiences, and especially in Irish whiskey. And I guess that, like Scotland, if you look at them, they have a amazing, tourism industry built off the back of whiskey, and they do it really well. The regionality aspect of it's quite interesting to go and visit the different areas of Scotland. Like Isla would be the heavily peated region, and then you've Speyside, Campbelltown, that type of thing. Highlands, lowlands, but with Ireland, it's still quite new, and the likes of people from America, people from Asia, the Europeans, like the Germans and whatnot, are just kind of used to that aspect of traveling for tourism, and looking for experiences, and looking to do this sort of thing. So yeah, it's an exciting aspect of the Irish whiskey market, and I think the guys who are really into it, want to, once you do a tour in sort of a big corporate type environment, they kind of become the same. The same story gets told over and over again. Once you kind of know about the basics of the production of, turning the grains into the liquid, the brewing, the fermentation, the distillation, it's interesting to see. But kind of what we're noticing is people really want to get geeky and go to kind of the off the track experience and the smaller experience. So that's whenever the likes of Two Stacks and Cologne are starting to really notice an impact of tourism. So the likes of Cologne Distillery there, it's at one of Ireland's smallest distilleries at the time. When it started, it was the smallest. It's a 10 meter by 10 meter shed, and it's very authentic, and you can really understand the process by going there, because it's all done in one room essentially. And the grains get milled on site, they get mashed on site. There's wild fermentation, so we would, after we take off our mash of the day, we put it into a container and set it outside and let it get infected with wild bacteria for a few weeks, and then pitch some yeast, distiller's yeast, and then when we bring it in, we double distill it using direct flame fired stills, and old style worm tub condensers, and then the barrels are just in the next room. So we also would smoke our own grains outside in a little shed. So like people really enjoy going and seeing that, where wow, this is how this is made, and you can see it all there and really experience it and get the smells of the brewing and distilling, and have a fantastic tasting. So yeah, we're finding more and more, and kind of with us doing the blending tour, as opposed to discussing more about the distillation side of things. It's more about appreciating the finished product and what you can do in the blending side of things. So yeah, look, it's a really exciting aspect of the industry that's growing. And as I said, Tourism Ireland, Northern Ireland are really looking to get behind that. And in Northern Ireland, they've developed the spirits trail, which then gets marketed at places like the airports, Belfast International, Belfast City. So people are coming in, they're seeing an offering of, here's 10 or so whiskey experiences in Northern Ireland you can go and visit, and you get a distillery passport, so you can check off when you do the experiences. So all that's happened, bringing footfall. And in the last few months, we've been working with Tourism NI with tour operators. The big one for Two Stacks is the golf tour operators. So we have Sleep Donner down the road. You've a lot of inbound American golfers, and European and Asian as well, but most of it's American focused. And we've hosted a few tours where you'd have generally like 8 people playing golf in the morning, then coming for a whiskey experience in the afternoon. It's just a real nice day out for them. And being located in Uri, you're an hour from Dublin or you're an hour from Belfast, we're kind of on the way from the people traveling to and from the airports and whatnot, or traveling from Royal County down, then maybe heading to Dublin to play some of the courses down there, Portmarnock and whatnot. So that's been really good. And when the American guys come in, it's kind of, they want the premium tour, and then they want to buy an extra cocktail, and then they want to buy the most expensive bottle you sell and bring it home with them. So we see a good opportunity for us next year where we have groups like that, and not just golf, but other tour operators bringing in a group of people, like 8 to 12 people, to experience the whiskey tasting. And it's fun for them people to do when they're on a trip or they're on their holidays to get a nice taste and then bring something kind of authentic home with them that they can't maybe find in their home market readily available type thing, and it's outside of the bigger brand.
So I think it would be interesting to see if they took the whiskey tour before the golf. I just wanted to try and understand that relationship between people taking the tour, the footfall, and perhaps then an uptake in sales, and kind of what kind of relationship that had.
But when people do visit you, and they get that experience, and like with us, you're getting a personal experience. You're kind of meeting the co-founders and getting sort of an in-depth, like, ask whatever question you want, and we'll.
Well, you said it's authentic. I mean, you talked about the bigger corporate tours. I mean, if I look at Guinness in particular, it's a very digitalized virtual multimedia tour, and in fact, you don't really see production at all. I think my brother, we used to work in the Canal Court for many years in the bar, but I think back in the day, I think you used to see more of the nuts and bolts of Guinness and its production, but it's moved completely the other way. And to be honest with you,
same with Jameson.
Yeah,
they have the Bow Street in Dublin. That's not a distillery site, and then down in Middleton in Cork, it's a visitor experience, but you don't get to see distills or that type of thing. So them places do really, huge amount of tourism, and lots of people go and visit them. But from our aspect, there is more of a behind the scenes kind of authentic, and you're right up to where the production's happening, and it's great. And what it kind of does is people having that experience, it sticks with them, and then when they travel home, or they still want to experience the product, so they're sourcing it out, either buying it online or finding out where our distributors are. In America, like, we have visitors and they're wanting to know, are you distributed in our state? Where can I buy this at home? And because we have a decent representation there, we can often direct them to where they can buy it. And it's great. So you're building kind of brand advocates or brand ambassadors, people who have enjoyed the experience, and then they go away and become a fan for, you could say, life, or it just builds up that your reputation, and people really enjoy it. Because there's recently, somebody was saying that this guy Larry Dwyer, who does a podcast called Whiskey Chats, he was saying, people would say what their favorite whiskey is, and he's surprised. He's going, oh, that's not really a very good whiskey, but the reason why that really enjoys it is because they had a real good experience with it. They had a real good tour or a real good tasting with somebody, and it stuck with them, and a brand can really stick with them. So it's important when people do come to visit us that we give them a real good experience. And I think with Cologne Distillery especially, like, it's left a mark on lots of people that become real fans for life and really, really into the ethos of the distillery because they've experienced it firsthand.
Yeah. I mean, I think you mentioned at the outset about Two Stacks Nation. You're developing a cult following, and I seen on the website that you sell merchandise. How much of that do people invest in the merchandise, or how necessary is it to your brand, or is it just a token to supplement the brand?
Yeah, I think it's kind of nice to have sort of stuff. The main thing is the whiskey, but when you have like groups that are fans, they love a bit of glassware. They like to have, like our hoodies and t-shirts and all. It is appreciated. We don't see it as a means to make profit or anything or have big sales with it. A lot of the time we would give it away, at whiskey shows and stuff. But it's just, yeah, that sort of building up the brand notoriety type thing. People visibility, people see it, but
Yeah.
it is when people come and visit, especially when they're at the shop. Like it's sort of they want a hat or something to take away and then wear it, and show that I know this brand or I've been to their location and it's quite good. So it's something we've only really been doing in the last, I guess, year with having a bit of a merchandise offering. And like with Cologne, the cult following there, this guy's looking, more of it. We probably haven't offered enough of it, and they want sort of different things. They'd be saying to us, "Oh, it'd be class to have like 2 stack socks." So we went and got socks made, but it was because people were saying, "Oh, I wear socks," and we had 2 stack socks. And you would have some funny things coming out now and again, and as I said, it's the cult followers that are wanting to get it and snap it up.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think that if you were to gift people 2 stack socks for Christmas, they might be offended because like he's just taking them from work, or
Well, they should love it.
I wanted to understand the significance because I'd read about you guys opening your facility, it being the first of its kind in the Newry area for X amount of number of years. Like, what is the significance of that, and what does it mean?
Yeah, well, I guess it's, yeah, people don't really understand what a bonder blender is. Like, what is a bonded warehouse? If you sort of go back in history again, back to like the 1800s, Irish whiskey heyday, it was the most sold spirit in the world. Um, you had the distilleries like, say, John's Lane in Dublin, which was a Jameson distillery. You had, or it was a Parish distillery, sorry, and then you had Bow Street Jameson distillery. The distilleries actually at the time mainly produced the whiskey, and then they sold it on to merchants or bonders. You see it in lots of mirrors and stuff around, like say Duke of York and Belfast. You go in, there's all the memorabilia, and or in pubs all around Ireland or old grocery shops, you see the words like bonders and whatnot. And basically, even with say Guinness at the time, the the whiskey or the beers were transported in bulk in say casks even to the local merchants. You could have had a hardware shop and a pub, and it was all the one type thing. And they bottled the Guinness there on site, and the bonders they took the spirit and matured it and finished it in barrels. So some of the, like you mentioned Redbreast earlier, it was a bonder called Gilbey's, and they were a wine importer in Dublin. So they would have been importing sherry a good bit. So they would have bottled the sherry in Ireland and then had the empty sherry cask, took it to the distillery, had it filled, and then they kept it in their own bonded warehouse until a certain time where they're ready to bottle it. With Redbreast, it was a 10-year-old product at the time, and now it'd be sort of known as the 12-year-old would be the starting one. But there was that rich tradition of bonders and blenders throughout Ireland. There was thousands of them. And the distillery brands weren't really the main thing that people thought of. They thought of the bonders as the brand.
Mhm.
So it was common sort of place throughout Ireland. Not that long ago in history that there was lots of bonders around. And the bonded warehouse term comes from, that it's a tax sort of terminology where if you hold something under bond, you don't pay the taxes until you take it out of the bond. And a bond might, technically mean that you, with the tax authorities, you have a bond with them to cover the liability on that. So with us having a bonded warehouse here in Newry, and throughout Ireland, there's only several bonding companies at the moment. You have JJ Corey is one based in Clare, and WD O'Connell as well as another bonding company, and then Two Stacks were kind of one of the only ones in the north, as far as I know. And the difference between the bonder and an independent bottler, or a whiskey brand that doesn't have a distillery, whether they disclose that or not, or try and make it look like they have a distillery, is that we have control over the liquids, and that the casks of whiskey are in our warehouse, and we bottle them ourselves. we blend them ourselves, we pick the casks they go into. So it's it's kind of we see that as there should be more of that, or there will be more of that coming back into the Irish whiskey space, where you have not just lots of new distilleries starting, but more independent bottlers or more bonders coming into the space, and that's where you get kind of a more robust market. If you look at Scotland as kind of being a stronger market, in the more recent history, they have lots of different independent bottlers and bonder type companies. Say like Johnny Walker is one of the most sold whiskies in the world. It's not a distillery, Johnny Walker. It's made up of about 20 distilleries liquids that Diageo haven't owned them all, but the liquid comes from various distilleries and goes into a product. That's kind of where we see a future direction happening again in Irish whiskey. So whenever we started Two Stacks, that was what we set out to be and do. And people often ask us, like, where's your distillery, or are you looking to build a distillery? And it's like, no, we're not. This is bonding is an art form in itself, or blending is an art form in itself, and we can create new categories. So you hear the term single malt, single grain, single pot still. Single means it comes from one distillery, but like in other markets, like as I mentioned, Scotland, there's a whole other category which is like blended malt. So that means that the single malts are taken from various different distilleries and then blended together, and it creates a new sort of category in itself. So for us, like even pot still whiskey being unique to Ireland, we're uniquely positioned that we can be one of the only ones that do blended pot stills. So taking the distillate from the various distilleries, and that's some of the projects we have in the pipeline, and some of the casks and warehouse here we have are blends of malts and pot stills from different distilleries in Ireland, and that's new and exciting, I guess. Commonplace 150 years ago, but that's sort of a different take on how to be an Irish whiskey company type thing, that we're reintroducing that, but it's it was commonplace in history. So that's kind of why we think it's unique, and it's cool to have it in Uri, and one of the only companies doing it, and I think at the moment the only company in Northern Ireland that sets out to do that. That's their take on the Irish whiskey industry. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that in many ways you pay homage to Irish whiskey heritage, and you speak clearly of that in your abstract take on the chimneys in Dundalk and that heritage. But you've put a contemporary twist in it on what you're trying to do, and it's clear to see that very exciting things lie ahead. But I wanted to understand, lastly, like in $1 billion industry, how difficult is it to carve a space out for yourself, and not only do that, but because I would imagine over the course of whiskey history that there's been many that have come and gone. But how do you ensure that space that you carve out for yourself, that it's sustainable and that you secure longevity?
Yeah, I think you just have to, live and die by your ethos and your principles of what your brand is. So for us, it's transparency, it's innovation, and it's integrity, and it's kind of flavor first. So we kind of have to do that. It might sound like we've set ourselves a hard task by you have to always innovate, but it kind of comes naturally, I suppose. That's the way we operate. So we'll always be looking to create new whiskies, new flavors, but also disrupt things to do with packaging and things to do with presentation and stuff so. Like we've got a million ideas type thing, and you can't do them all at once, but you focus in on the sort of the one or two or three that are you think's kind of the best ideas of the moment, and kind of go with that. And being a smaller company, we can be nimble. We can decide to do what we want quite quickly compared to say a bigger corporation type business where for them, decisions might be marketing led, and then it takes 1 or 2 years or longer to bring it to market, whereas we're more flexible and can move it quite quickly. Um, Kind of have fun with it too. It's, I guess we set out if we're going to be working for ourselves, the risks that come with that, are tricky, but if it works, like, let's try and make it fun. You don't want it to become boring or not interesting anymore. So yeah, just keep things fun, and that kind of feeds into the culture. Like, we are a small company, but we've a growing team. In the last year, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but we've hired like 4 new people, and kind of them coming into the team, and experience, and kind of we want this workplace to be fun type thing. That's a big part of it, and everybody can contribute and everybody can have an idea, and we'll work together and try and make them things happen. And there is sort of that get stuck in attitude as well, because we're a small team. So if we have pressure to get orders out and whatnot, it's like all hands on deck. Everybody jumps on the can line or the bottom line, and everybody does, different. Everybody helps out, but we kind of have our strengths, and then that's what role you go into. My strength, I guess, would be in the operations and the financial end of it. Being an accountant, it's very helpful that way. And Shane's strengths would be in the sales and leading that. And Donald as well, his strengths are in the brand ambassador. We would see him as global brand ambassador, meaning he's the guy that can really present the product really well. He does the best tastings, and he's great for going over and meeting distributors and doing trainings and whatnot. So yeah, kind of everybody working to their strengths, and I guess we're all really into it. Like, it's not a 9 to 5 thing. It can be tricky at times, but you're constantly like involved in it. Like, you work a lot of hours, but it doesn't feel like work.
That's what I wanted to understand. Like, how much fun are you having with it? Well, as much fun that you can allow yourself to have, because at the end of the day, there's still a need to generate revenue and earn a living from it. But I'd heard before someone said that, if you're fortunate enough to do what you love, that you'll never work another day in your life.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's trying to get it to be like that. There is challenges. There's sometimes things go wrong, or it's tough to get over. There's big challenges and whatnot, but it's satisfying in a way. Like, I think that there's fun aspects in making it successful. Growing the turnover and being more profitable and reinvesting that into the business, and opening up a warehouse, and buying more machinery and making things more efficient, and then investing in the future. Like, whiskey is a long-term game. Like, where we go out to distilleries every year and commission our own mash bills. So we source the barrels. We take the barrels to the distillery, go down, do a day or two's distilling, and then fill those barrels, take them back to our warehouse. But you're not going to sell that for about 5 years potentially, or it could be 3 years, but it could be 10 years. So it's kind of, there's a lot of risk, but the reward is there whenever you release products and people enjoy them, and you get good feedback, and that kind of fuels you to keep going and keep coming up with ideas. Like the likes of the 100% rye Irish whiskey, that was a project from coming up 2 years ago now, and we tasted from time to time. It's not whiskey yet, but we go on, this is going to be really cool when it comes out, and people are going to like be surprised by it, sort of thing. So that type of stuff keeps you going and wanting you to do more. You could say it's innovation, but it's more just sort of trialing things out, things that you think would work, and not just taking a solo approach, but because we've got the team dynamic and there's a few of us, we bounce the ideas off, and if 2 or 3 of us, or 3 out of 4 of us like the idea, then let's give it a go. But there's 1 or 2 whiskies that wouldn't be my favorite, but the other guys love, whereas I might love something and they don't. But it is that whole broad spectrum of different styles and different flavors suit various people. So it's just quite interesting, and it keeps us motivated to keep doing it, and for the love of it. And yeah, it's a bit like with Cologne Distillery there. I was mentioning about the process of the mashing, the brewing, and the fermentation being long, and the distilling using that old style techniques of direct flame fired. It takes us 12 hours in a shift, in a day to do one distillation. And out of we would make 1,000 liters of beer essentially at the start of the process. Out of that 1,000 liters, after the double distillation, you get 70 liters of spirit that can be that's your hearts of your second cut. That's what become whiskey. So to fill one barrel of whiskey takes us three days of distillation, and it's crazy. It's that's not. If you compare it to a larger, more commercial distillery, they'd be filling tens, if not hundreds, of barrels a day.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of it's for the passion or the love of we're making this distillate in a way that we think it's going to be awesome. And now that the whiskies are past the 3-year-old mark, some of them, some of it's now 4 years old, just tasting it and then getting the reaction from other people saying, wow, this is an amazing spirit. It kind of fulfills kind of the 4 years of hardship it took to get that product to the market.
I would imagine patience has to be a virtue. You would need patience and bucket loads in the whiskey industry.
Yeah, that's it. A lot of patience and a lot of hard work. Brendan there's, he's doing 12-hour days. It's crazy, and to sustain that for a long time, it has to be fun, and it has to be the passion behind it to drive you to want to do it. And yeah, that's kind of what we do.
I wanted to ask, and it relates to your Polaris collection. I was reading on the website, and it has a particular narrative. It's one of adventure, wonder, cosmic in many respects. It talks about the North Star. When you supplement a whiskey with a particular narrative and story, why is that done? I mean, because I would imagine it's not necessary, but in many ways it's a selling point that because people love a story, and they love when a product like wine or whiskey is storied. But how do you feel when it has that narrative and story behind it that it resonates with consumers?
Yeah, I think as long as the story is authentic, and there's a reason for it, and there are a lot of narratives out there and stories that they get found out very quickly if they're not true, or there's not an authenticity behind it. If there's somebody's calling themselves a master distiller or something like that when they're not distilling, it's very easy to find out that that's not the truth. So I guess with any of our narratives, like Polaris, it is a sort of a focus on the North Star of our logo, about that navigation piece. So we wanted to have a collection that there's only going to be 2 or 3 releases a year, and it's sort of warehouse exclusive, so people can only buy it direct from us. But it is kind of us champion. These are the whiskies that we find are the best we have in the warehouse, and it's done in a series. So we had 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 was a series of the Cabernet Franc ice wine casks. We did a single malt, then a single pot still, then a blend of malt and pot still. Now we're moving on to Polaris 2.1, 2.2 series, which is different barrel finishing and a different take on it. So it's, I think, yeah, for the whiskey consumer, it is good to have some categorization within your portfolio so they can understand what's the focus here. It could be that we have another product that we had released called Time Well Spent, and it was a 12-year-old single grain and a 21-year-old single malt. So the Time Well Spent for us is kind of the more age statement type product, a bit older, and we don't focus on the age statements because we don't really believe that age statements equal, the older it is, the better it is. It's not often the case. But it's good to define that into a category where time well spent. Where what we're saying here is here's the more older age statement stuff we have. Polaris, this is our collection of the best discs that we think we have in our warehouse, and there will be a few other little series that come out over time. It just helps sort of people to navigate what is this offering that the guys are putting out there. We'd always have our core collection. Even within the core collection, there's a slight categorization that we have three of them that we call double barrel series. Just means two cask use. So the single grain double barrel, single malt double barrel, and single pot still double barrel. Then we have our signature blend, which we do in a cask strength version, and then Smoke and Mirrors being the peated imperial stout one. And then you can see those in bottle and those in can. And then anything outside of that, where we have special finishes, special cask finishes, it's just kind of good to try and categorize them, so people can understand what it is that you're offering. So similar with Cologne, I guess we have rum and raisin is kind of what we would call the core whiskey product, but then we also have Barn Tool. Barn Tool is an old Irish word for means authenticity, really, or true to meaning. And if people know that there's a Barn Tool release, it's a single cask, single pot still release from Cologne. It's a narrative or a story that you're sharing with the consumer who's interested in it. And give them a bit of an understanding of the product that's coming out.
Lastly, and I suppose I just want to wrap up. I don't want to take any more of your time, but given that you're the co-founder and it's very much your baby, how much more meaningful is the experience that it's your innovation, your creativity? It's not that you're working for someone, and yes, by all means, you would apply yourself to be the best that you could be. But here you have something that is something that you've created from the ground up. How much more meaningful, and I guess how much more pride can you take from it?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think there is a good bit more meaning attached to it, and I say that effort you put in, the longer hours, working at weekends, working evenings, and it mightn't be like working sitting on the laptop, but it's interacting on your phone, and it could be social media type stuff where you're interacting with consumers or whatnot, or late night emails, and then all the traveling you do and stuff. There are sacrifices that you make, with home life and all the rest, but try and make up for it elsewhere. But it's sort of you're more comfortable putting the max effort in, I suppose, because it is sort of something that you have ownership of, and you really want it to make a success. And we're not kind of on our own. Like we're co-founders. Like there's 7 of us in the same position, and we all support each other and try and help each other out. We kind of take turns with the travels, so it's not all on one person's shoulders to do that, and work together very well. And coming from the same area and same kind of background, and we're all around the same age and doing the same things in life, getting married, having children, all this while our company, these things have happened while our company has just started. It's sort of it has a lot of meaning to it, and everybody has to be bought into it, and working with the same sort of vision or goal of we really want to make this as successful as it can be, while still being fun and sustainable, and everybody is enjoying themselves and has a nice lifestyle type thing. So there's a good bit of meaning attached to it, and that infiltrates every part of your life. It's not it isn't like a job that you can switch off from, or standard 9 to 5. There's a good bit of crossover into all aspects of your life, and I'm sure it's the same with all the guys. Like everybody in your family, kind of is interested to know how's things going, how you're getting on, and all your friends and whatnot are everybody's supportive, like, and it's great, to have that sort of people are willing to song.
I would imagine extended family and close friends whether they realize it or not, are probably in some way brand ambassadors. Because I'm sure they tell everybody who they meet that that they're associated or that their family are in the industry. Of everything that you've done so far, and I don't know if it's perhaps shared with your co-founders, but like, what's the thing you're most proud of?
Like I would say, the drama in the can kind of sticks out for me because it was a real risk, and it was kind of an idea that we had. Johnny, the designer guy I mentioned earlier, he was kind of involved in it accidentally becoming an idea in that we said to Johnny, can you do a render of the Two Stacks original first cup blend? Could you do a render on that on a can? We're thinking of maybe looking at RTDs, Irish whiskey, ginger, lime type thing. And so he just took the label and rendered it onto a can, and it said, Two Stacks Irish whiskey, 100 ml can. It's kind of like, wow, imagine they'd put straight whiskey in a can. That'd be a bit crazy, like. And then like, oh, would it be? Then sort of Donald, I think was the first one to say, he's like, oh, drama in a can, that'd be a cool name. And it's kind of like, wow, that does have legs here. We have to do this here. And so this idea was floating around just as COVID hit, and it was kind of like, oh, with all these beer kegs to destroy, with like what's going to happen with COVID and all, and we kind of just said, sure, let's just give it a go type thing. So the bounce back loan was around at the time, so you could get 50k of a bounce back loan. So that's what we did. We took the 50k, went and bought 125,000 cans was the minimum order to get them printed and whatnot, and it was in a 100 ml size. So nobody in Europe, the smallest size of can is basically 150 ml, so it didn't really exist. So we sourced these cans from Asia and we imported them, and because there's 125,000 and we needed 12,500 liters of whiskey, so we went and bought that, which was our first batch of whiskey was like 1,000 liters, so we're going like 12 and a half times bigger, and then ship it over to the US. So it was kind of just the big risk of using that, what was happening at the time of COVID, and just turn it into a success. Then that it was a big punt at the time, to do 125,000 cans, but 2 years later we've done 10 times that. To me it's quite a rewarding aspect of what we've done, and so we're quite proud of the drama in a can, just pushing on with something that hadn't been done before and turn it into something cool, but also successful, because that's led us to be noticed in various markets. It's sort of it's helped with our bottle whiskey sales, and just people around the world getting to know who we are. So I'd say the drama in a can is probably one of the better things we've done.
Yeah, I think it's great, man. And the fact that you're three local lads, you have your facility in Uri. I'm from Uri myself, and I guess the running narrative throughout this 20 episodes of the podcast is 20 people from Uri effectively, and it's telling their story. Very often they're faced with obstacles or things that perhaps would deter most people, but they've decided to push through regardless of the risk, because it's something they're very passionate about. And I think that's clear to be seen for you and the other two guys. I wanted to understand, and this is just for a bit of fun, but has anybody been bold enough perhaps at Christmas or for birthdays to buy you a bottle of whiskey? Because I would imagine that is a risky enough feat in itself, because I mean, if somebody knows it, it's probably you, whether it's crap or not,
Yeah, no, well, yeah, they do get bought whiskey at that time, and no, generally, like I like anything, but as you mentioned Red Breast brand earlier, was one of my first favorites and still would be. So for wedding presents and a few Christmases, I've got a few bottles of Red Breast, and never disappointed with that. It's good. So, but and I like to sometimes gift people a whiskey as well, and generally they're not disappointed with any of the Two Stacks or clones that they might get gifted. Like, so that's good.
You
It's a
can't
good
go
question.
too far wrong.
Yeah.
Just as it relates to the future, what can we expect?
Well, I think for us, like we want to kind of grow, continue to grow sustainably. Like I guess it has been successful. Like in our first year with two stacks, we turned over £1 million, and then the second year was 1.5. This year we should do three, and then we've sat down recently and said, where do we want to go, and we're kind of targeting 15 million within the next 3 to 5 years. So although you don't want to just go off like a target number, there's a whole lot of stuff goes behind that, but kind of continue to grow the business. And that means that we want to get a new bottling line, which is fully automated, because we do everything semi-automated or quite manually at the moment. Could be a second canning line. Maybe increase the facility in terms of extending the warehouse and stuff like that, and be able to produce more, because we've a lot of dry goods to store, but we've also a lot of whiskey and casks. So just keep reinventing it, or reinvesting in the future of it by sourcing good whiskies, creating new whiskies from scratch. That sort of going to distilleries and having our own individual recipes made, um, and just kind of support our partners that we have at the moment. 35 markets is a lot, so we don't necessarily want to have 70 very quickly, but we want the 35 that we have to double or triple and grow sustainably, and have good relationships with our partners, and there's great friendships being developed with them and stuff. So
How important, just out of interest, when you're a new brand or a new business, like how important is it to demonstrate restraint at times when you're trying to grow?
yeah, it is quite important. Like you can easily lose the run of yourself a wee bit by thinking like, oh look, we're doing great here, let's go spend a lot of money on marketing, or let's go and do this type of thing. You can be very wasteful with, because you still have a small amount of resource really. So for us, we have to be quite disciplined, and especially with any vanity type marketing projects or anything like that. It's sort of sense check things. You have to investing in brand development and marketing, but being smart about it. And for me, being the accountant, it's sort of looking at things in detail, like, does this actually make sense? You have to be very careful on margins with the product. What we're selling is actually making enough margin and so forth. But if we're spending on marketing, are we going to get a return out of it? Does it make sense? And picking one or two things to go after. I mentioned global travel retail being one of those. It is a marketing activity in that, because you don't actually make any money out of being in airports, because the airports take a huge margin, and then you have to spend a lot of money on branding and marketing and promoting things, and you know that whole thing where it's like, is it worth it? Well, yeah, to get into different locations around the world, and that's like a shop window to your brand. That particular thing's worth it, but because we're investing in that, we're not going to go and invest in all these other things. So I think being sort of cautious of your spend, and putting it into the right areas. While not, you can't not spend or not promote yourselves, or invest in things, but it's taking a step by step. Like, say with things like expansion, we would have loved to have bought a new bottling line 6 months ago, and this last 6 months we would have been producing a lot faster. But you kind of have to go through the pain point of, no, we have to fake it till you make it. Like, we have to put the hard work in, do all the bottling by hand ourselves, until we're actually in a comfortable spot where, okay, now we can afford to maybe get that bottling line. But say, looking for support too, like looking for any grant you can get, or any sort of help. So investing in is quite important with grants and things they got in Intertrade Ireland. So when we're looking at hiring a new employee or investing, you're kind of looking to see what support can we get there. We're lucky that we don't have a lot of finance in the company. I mentioned the bounce back loan, that 50K we got 2.5 years ago. That's like the only finance we've ever had, and it's I think it's over 5 years, so we've less than 20K or something to pay back. But it's sort of at this point we're on the fringe of should we start taking on finance to grow. But we've been fortunate that we just have been quite good with our cash flow and quite good with our spending. That it's just all sort of reinvestment of profit that's got us this far. So that cautious approach and don't try and run too fast. It's sort of sensible approach kind of helps too. So
I think. I mean, I've no background in business, but I've come to appreciate the word measured. Just with respect to anything in life, if you take a measured approach, there's that need to balance risk versus reward. But again, like you said, there is a need to spend in order to grow. I mean, very often I'm reminded of Del Boy from Only Fools and Horses. He who dares wins. I think you have to live by that mantra in order to grow and be successful. That's all I wanted to know, Liam. You've been a gentleman. Again, like I've always had an appreciation of whiskey because I think it is storied. I understand that Newry did have a whiskey industry. I mean, I know the name Matt Darcy. I bought my father not the lower end, but a more expensive bottle as a gift for Christmas. And I think it's wonderful that you guys have brought that industry back to Newry, and it's great. It's great to see Newry thrive.
Like for us, Newry is a brilliant place for us to be located and do business. You had COVID, but you also had Brexit, and kind of people are always going, "Oh, is Brexit not a nightmare for you?" And it's no, it's not actually. It's an advantage to us because where we're located, we've dual access to European market and UK market and stuff like that. And for us, like we looked at Dundalk or even down as far as Drogheda to base ourselves, and the cost of doing business over the borders, it's far more than here in Northern Ireland, and it's it's a great place to be located in Newry. So we're delighted, that this is where we're based and this is kind of where we'll stay. And for the likes of Brendan and Shane, living overseas, Australia and London, New York, all that, they're delighted to be able to live at home and live in the Newry area, and the more mountains on our doorstep, and it's just a fantastic place. So one of the things we love doing is bringing people here. It's better than traveling all the time overseas. Bring people here and show them the local area and how beautiful it is, and the vibrancy of the food and drink culture here and all the rest. So it's it's class.
Yeah, it is remarkable, and it's great to see young lads like yourselves with a vision and doing it locally. I think it's wonderful. Well, that's it, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I wish you every success, and I know for some people, kind of the middle of November is a little early to talk about Christmas, but I wish you and yours a happy Christmas, and it's been a pleasure.